The stars were silent, stretching out in every direction like an endless sea of points of light. In the vast emptiness of space, there was little to disturb the peace. But today, something was different. A strange signal cut through the quiet, flashing across the galaxy, a signal no one could ignore. On the bridge of the ages, Captain Sarah Duncan stared at the communication screen, her eyes narrowing as the signal blinked again. It was coming from deep space, far beyond any known human colonies or territories. The signal was faint, distorted, as if something or someone was trying to reach them. The strange part was that it was encoded in a pattern that matched no known language, no known technology. "Captain, we've got something," said Lieutenant Cole, the communications officer, his voice tight with uncertainty. "It's coming from the coordinates we inputted. It looks like a distress signal, but it doesn't match anything we know." Duncan's brow furrowed. "A distress signal? From where?" Cole shook his head. "That's the problem, Captain. The signal is coming from a part of the galaxy we've never mapped. It's not in any of our systems." The crew was silent, uncertainty hanging thick in the air. The Aegis was a small patrol ship, far from the main fleets, and this wasn't part of their usual assignments. They weren't prepared for this. Duncan turned to face her senior officers. "Set course for the source of the signal," she ordered. "Let's find out what's out there." The ship's engines hummed as they slowly turned toward the coordinates. The vast emptiness of space seemed to stretch on forever as the Aegis traveled deeper into the unknown. The crew worked quietly, tense and focused, as the ship cut through the void. No one spoke much. Every person on the bridge was aware that something strange was happening, but no one knew what. "We're almost there," Cole said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand it. There's no record of anything in this area. No star systems, no planets. It's just empty space. Keep me updated," Duncan replied, her voice calm but with an edge of concern. She felt a pit form in her stomach. There was something deeply unsettling about the whole situation, something she couldn't quite place. After a few minutes, the ship's sensors began to pick up something. A shadow appeared on the screens. It was large, moving slowly, but it wasn't supposed to be there. The readings confirmed that it was a ship. No, a battleship. "Captain, you're not going to believe this," Cole said, his voice trembling now. "There's a ship out here, and it's human." Duncan's eyes widened in shock. "Human? That can't be right. There are no reports of human ships in this part of the galaxy. Where did it come from?" The ship's sensors zoomed in on the mysterious vessel. It was enormous, dwarfing the Aegis in size. But what was most bizarre was the condition of the ship. It appeared old, weathered, and badly damaged, yet still functional. It seemed like it had been abandoned for years, yet it was still out there, floating in the emptiness. "Are we sure this is human?" Duncan asked, still not fully believing what she was hearing. She couldn't wrap her head around it. A lost human ship out here. That didn't make sense. "Yes, Captain. I've never seen anything like it before, but the readings confirm it's definitely human-made," Cole said. "The design matches nothing we know, though. It's unlike any human battleship in our fleet. It's old, very old." Duncan stood, her mind racing. "Prepare to board. Get the team ready. We're going to investigate this ship." Minutes later, Duncan stood in front of a small team of officers, all geared up and ready to board the mysterious vessel. The crew was nervous. They knew what could be waiting for them, and they didn't know what to expect. "Remember, we don't know what we're walking into," Duncan said, her voice steady, trying to calm their nerves. "Stay alert. We're only going to learn more once we're on board." The crew nodded and followed her into the airlock. With a hiss of pressure, the doors opened, and the team stepped onto the surface of the ancient battleship. The atmosphere was heavy, with a strange, eerie silence filling the air. As they moved deeper into the ship, the dim lights flickered, casting long shadows along the walls. The ship was in poor condition. Parts of it were rusted and falling apart, and there was an unsettling smell in the air, as if the place had been abandoned for a long time. "This ship shouldn't even be here," Lieutenant Reed, one of the engineers, whispered. "How is it still functional? And who would leave something like this behind?" Duncan motioned for the team to move forward. They continued through the corridors, the silence surrounding them, broken only by the sounds of their footsteps. The deeper they went, the more the ship seemed to come alive with mystery. Everything felt off. Then they reached the command center. The doors to the control room slid open, and the crew stepped in. It was abandoned, the consoles cracked and inactive, but there was a faint glow coming from a single control panel. It flickered, showing signs of life. "Captain, look at this," Cole said, moving toward the panel. His fingers danced across the dusty surface, trying to activate it. The panel lit up, revealing something they had not expected. A map. A map of the galaxy, but with strange coordinates marked on it. Coordinates none of them recognized. Before anyone could speak, a voice crackled through the comms, distant and barely audible. It was a distorted message, but it was clear enough to understand. "We, humanity, still out there. Come, find us. It's not safe." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. Duncan felt her heart race. They had just uncovered the first clue, but what was it leading to? And who or what had left that message? She looked at her team, a mix of fear and excitement in their eyes. They were about to uncover a mystery that would change everything. "Let's find out who's really out here," she said, determination in her voice. "We need answers, and we're not leaving without them." The eerie silence of the ancient battleship seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. Captain Sarah Duncan stood at the control panel, staring at the map that had mysteriously appeared before them. The strange coordinates, marked clearly in bright red, sent a chill down her spine. They were coordinates no one had ever seen before. The faint transmission they had received, barely audible, kept echoing in her mind. "Humanity, still out there. Come, find us. It's not safe." "Captain, we need to be careful," Lieutenant Cole said, his voice barely a whisper as he scanned the dimly lit control room. "This place it's not right." Duncan didn't respond at first. Her mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. How could a human ship this old still be here? Who had left the message? And what did it mean by "it's not safe"? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft beep from the ship's sensors. Lieutenant Reed, the ship's engineer, was at the sensor console, his face pale. "Captain, something's wrong," Reed said, his voice strained. "I'm picking up unusual readings. Something's moving around us." Duncan turned sharply. "What do you mean, something's moving?" "It's like a ship, but there's no visual contact." "It's too close for comfort," Reed replied, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "I can't identify what it is, but it's definitely there." The tension in the room thickened. Duncan quickly gathered her thoughts. She couldn't afford to panic, not when her crew depended on her. "Scan the area. I want full visual confirmation now." The crew quickly scattered to their posts, eyes glued to the screens. The atmosphere was heavy, the kind of silence that made every footstep sound like a thunderclap. A cold sweat began to form on Duncan's brow. She had trained her whole life for moments like this, moments of uncertainty. But this was different. The ship's exterior cameras came online, revealing nothing but the darkness of space. The mysterious human battleship loomed in the distance, but no other ships were visible. Yet the readings were clear. Something was out there, hidden in the shadows. "Nothing on the visual, Captain," Reed said, his voice trembling now. "But I'm still detecting movement, right on top of us." Duncan's eyes narrowed as she processed the information. A hidden ship. There was no way. How could it remain undetected like this? She turned to her weapons officer. "Prepare the weapons," she ordered, her voice firm but calm. "We need to be ready in case this turns into a fight." "Weapons armed, Captain," the officer replied, but there was doubt in his voice. "But I don't think it'll do much good if we can't see what we're up against." Duncan knew he was right. Without a clear target, their weapons would be useless. It was a ghost ship they were facing, a shadow in the vastness of space. But that didn't mean it wasn't dangerous. The crew waited in tense silence, each one hoping the mysterious enemy would reveal itself. The feeling of being hunted, without even knowing what was hunting them, was overwhelming. The Aegis felt small and vulnerable in the face of the unknown. They were surrounded by darkness, and there was no telling how many more enemies might be out there. Suddenly, a loud crackling sound filled the room, making everyone jump. The communication panel flickered to life, and a distorted voice came through. It was barely audible, but the message was clear enough. "Don't trust it." The voice sounded frantic, almost desperate. "They've found you. They're coming." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. Duncan's pulse quickened. "Who was that?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Whoever had sent the message was no longer on this ship. They had left a warning, one that was starting to feel more and more like a curse. The command center was now quiet, except for the faint, rhythmic sound coming from the depths of the abandoned battleship. It was like a heartbeat, slow, steady, almost comforting in its regularity. But for Captain Sarah Duncan and her crew, it was anything but comforting. Every fiber of her being screamed that something was terribly wrong. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, on a ship that was supposed to be her home and safe haven. "Captain, this is bad," Lieutenant Reed whispered. His voice was tense, his eyes darting around as if expecting something to jump out at any moment. "Something's out there. I can feel it." Duncan didn't respond right away. She, too, felt the strange weight in the air. The ship was alive with mystery, and every shadow seemed to hold a secret. The presence they had felt before, the shape that moved across the walls, was no longer just a fleeting thought. It was real. Something, or someone, was watching them. The crew stood together in the center of the room, each member tense and ready. They couldn't see the enemy, but they could feel it. Duncan turned to her senior officers, her voice calm but filled with a quiet urgency. "We need to find out what's going on here. We're not walking out of here until we understand what we're dealing with," she said. "But we need to stay together. Keep your eyes open." Lieutenant Cole, the communications officer, stepped forward, his hands moving quickly over the controls. He was trying to access the ship's log, hoping to find something that might explain the madness they had walked into. But the logs were damaged, corrupted by time, or perhaps some other force. "It's no use," Cole muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. "I can't get anything stable from these systems. It's like someone's trying to erase all the data." Duncan's mind raced. What could have done this? Why would anyone erase everything? It wasn't just an abandoned ship. It was a carefully hidden one, with a purpose yet unknown. "Get the rest of the team," Duncan ordered, her voice firm. "We're going deeper into the ship. If we're going to find answers, we need to search the entire vessel." The crew moved in a tight formation as they navigated the narrow corridors of the battleship. The walls seemed to close in on them with every step. The air grew colder still, and the flickering lights cast strange, stretching shadows that danced along the walls. The farther they went, the more it felt like they were walking into a trap. But there was no turning back now. They reached what appeared to be a control room, much larger than the one they had seen earlier. This one was darker, with strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols that none of them recognized. There were more of the flickering lights, and in the center of the room, a large, circular table covered with dust. Reed stepped forward cautiously, scanning the area. "This room's been untouched for years," he muttered. "It doesn't make sense. This ship, it looks like it was abandoned in a hurry, but there's no sign of any life." But before Duncan could respond, a sharp sound echoed through the room. A low, mechanical whirring noise that seemed to come from all directions. It was unlike anything they had heard before, unnatural, as if the ship itself was waking up. Duncan's hand went instinctively to her sidearm. "Stay alert," she said again, her voice low but commanding. The whirring stopped abruptly, replaced by a strange, high-pitched hum. The crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Then, without warning, the floor beneath them shuddered, and the entire room seemed to vibrate. "Get back," Duncan shouted, pushing her team toward the exit. But before they could make it, the walls began to shift. The room itself was changing, transforming before their eyes. Metal panels slid open, revealing hidden compartments, each one filled with glowing machinery. Something was coming to life. "What the hell is going on?" Reed said, his voice a mixture of fear and awe. Before anyone could answer, a massive wall of steel slammed down, trapping them inside the room. The air became thick, heavy with the sound of gears grinding, and the lights dimmed even further. The glowing symbols on the walls began to pulse, casting eerie, ghostly shadows. Then came the voice. A voice deep, mechanical, and chilling. "You should not have come here," it said. The words reverberated through the room, as if the very walls were speaking. "You were warned. But now, you will see the truth." The crew froze, fear rising in their chests. Duncan's heart raced. The voice came from nowhere, but it was everywhere, filling the room with an overwhelming presence. Who are you?" Duncan demanded, her voice steady despite the fear building inside her. "What do you want from us?" For a moment, there was silence. Then the voice responded. "We are the Watchers. We have watched your kind since the beginning. We have seen your rise and your fall. And now, we have seen your end." Duncan's grip on her weapon tightened. "What do you mean, our end?" she demanded. The cold, steel walls of the ship seemed to press in on Captain Sarah Duncan as she and her crew sprinted through the darkened hallways. The mechanical creatures from earlier had finally revealed themselves, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were not machines meant for defense or repair. They were hunters, predators that had been lying in wait for someone, to come. And that someone had arrived. "Move," Duncan yelled, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "We can't outrun them forever." Lieutenant Reed, ever the engineer, didn't need any further encouragement. He bolted ahead, pushing past the others, his mind already working on a way to shut down whatever systems control these creatures. But it wasn't just the machines they had to worry about. The voice of the Watchers still echoed in her mind, their chilling words playing over and over. "The war has already begun. The first battle has been fought, and you have lost." Her heart pounded harder. Who were these Watchers? Why had they called this ship their home for so long? And how had they known that humanity would come to this place, at this very moment? The narrow corridors twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the bowels of the abandoned battleship. The flickering lights created moving shadows that danced around them like silent predators. The strange symbols on the walls pulsed, as if alive. The air was heavy with tension, and every footstep they took seemed to echo louder in the oppressive silence. "Captain, this way," Lieutenant Cole called out. He had found an access hatch on the floor and was already prying it open. Without hesitation, Duncan followed him, the rest of the crew close behind. They slid down the hatch into a deeper section of the ship, praying they had not been followed. The hatch shut with a soft thud behind them, sealing them off from the monsters that now roamed the halls above. They were safe, for now. Duncan didn't waste time catching her breath. The danger was far from over. "Reed, what can we do to stop this?" she asked, her voice low but urgent. Reed wiped sweat from his brow and pulled out a small device from his utility belt. "The power systems are complicated. The Watchers seem to have control over most of them. But there's a chance I can disrupt the signal that's controlling the creatures. It'll buy us some time." "How much time?" Duncan asked, glancing around at her crew. They looked tired, scared, but they were still alive. That was a start. "Maybe 5 minutes," Reed replied. his face set with determination. "We'll need to move quickly after that." 5 minutes, Duncan muttered, weighing their options. "We'll have to make it count." They didn't have a choice. The next move was risky, but they had to act fast before they lost their chance. She turned to her crew. "We'll head to the main control room. If we can shut down the Watcher's control systems, we can stop the creatures and take control of this ship." Lieutenant Cole nodded. "It's our only shot." As they made their way through the narrow tunnels, Duncan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't just the machines. It was something much older, much more terrifying. The Watchers were toying with them. It was as if the crew was just another piece in their game. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the walls, followed by a series of mechanical whirs. The creatures were on their trail again. They hadn't been able to shake them off. "Move," Duncan ordered, her voice cutting through the growing chaos. They pushed forward, running as fast as they could. Every second counted. Every second brought them closer to danger. They reached another door, heavily reinforced, with large control panels on either side. Duncan grabbed the nearest panel and began typing in a series of commands. She wasn't a technician, but she'd learned enough over the years to know how to work the basics of the ship's systems. "Reed, we need that signal disruptor now," Duncan yelled. Reed was already moving, his hands flying over his device. Just a few more seconds. A loud screech filled the air, and the ground beneath them rumbled. The creatures were closing in fast. "Now, Reed," Duncan shouted. The device in Reed's hands flared to life, a burst of light flashing through the dim room. The signal disruptor hummed, and for a moment, everything was still. The creatures' movements stopped, their glowing eyes flickering, as if they were confused by the sudden change. Duncan didn't waste a second. "Go," she yelled. The crew surged forward, charging into the control room. Duncan couldn't let herself relax. Not yet. They had disrupted the signal, but they still needed to find the source. They needed to shut it down completely. The Watchers had too much power over the ship, and if they didn't stop it now, they would be trapped forever. Duncan's fingers hovered over the control console, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of the crew's eyes on her, the pressure mounting as the seconds ticked by. The encrypted messages on the screen weren't just warnings. They were the beginning of something far worse than anything humanity had ever faced. "We're too late," she muttered, almost to herself. "The Watchers knew we'd come. This ship, this weapon, it's all part of their plan." Lieutenant Reed stepped up beside her, his face pale but determined. "We can still stop them. We have to." Duncan's hands moved quickly over the console again, accessing more files, trying to make sense of what she was reading. The Watchers had been waiting for humanity to grow strong enough, daring enough, to venture into their domain. And now that they had, the Watchers were preparing to launch an all-out attack, an attack that would devastate Earth and crush humanity's hopes for survival. "Captain," Lieutenant Cole's voice broke through her thoughts. "The creatures, they're breaking free again. The signal disruptor is losing power." The room shook as the mechanical creatures began to stir once more, their movements quick and predatory. The disruption was only temporary. The Watchers had more control than they realized. Duncan's mind snapped into action. "We don't have time to shut it all down. We need to destroy the central core, the heart of the ship. If we do that, we'll take the whole system with it. The creatures, the control, everything." Reed's eyes widened. "You're talking about destroying the ship, but we'll be trapped." Duncan locked eyes with him. "We don't have a choice. If we don't stop this now, humanity won't survive. We'll all be wiped out before we can even fight back." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway, and the creak of metal shifting underscored the imminent danger they faced. The creatures were coming, and soon the Watchers would unleash their final assault. There was no more time to hesitate. "We don't have a way out," Duncan said, the resolve in her voice clear. "But if we make it to the core and initiate the destruction sequence, it'll take everything down with us. This ship, the Watchers' plan, their control. It all ends. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but they knew what needed to be done. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about making sure the Watcher's dark plan never reached Earth. "Let's do it," Reed said quietly, a hint of respect in his voice. "For humanity." Without another word, Duncan led the crew out of the control room and down the narrow, flickering hallways. They could feel the ship growing more unstable with every step. The creatures were close, too close. The eerie hum of the ship's systems grew louder, almost deafening. The walls seemed to pulse with a strange, ominous energy, as if the ship itself knew they were coming for its heart. They reached the central chamber, a massive room that housed the heart of the ship's power core. It was dark, save for the eerie red glow that bathed the room. Massive conduits snaked along the walls, feeding power into the ship's systems. "Reed, get to the power panel," Duncan commanded. Reed dashed forward, working quickly to bypass the security systems. The crew spread out, scanning the shadows. The creatures were closing in on them, and it wouldn't be long before they were attacked. Duncan's heart pounded in her chest. They were so close. "Ready, Captain," Reed shouted. With a final swipe of his hand, the countdown began. "Now, everyone, get to the exit," Duncan yelled. "Move." They turned to leave, but as they did, the lights flickered one last time. A strange humming sound filled the room, and suddenly the walls seemed to close in on them. The Watcher's voice boomed through the air, its tone dark and mocking. "You think you can stop it? You have already lost." The walls around them began to crack open, revealing more of the mechanical creatures. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the room, echoing through their bones. Duncan's heart skipped a beat. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of humanity itself. "Go," Duncan screamed, shoving her crew forward as the first of the creatures lunged at them. The countdown clock ticked down. 5 seconds, 4, 3. They ran, knowing that this would be their last chance. They didn't look back, not even once. The only thing that mattered now was getting to safety. The fate of the world was in their hands, and time was running out.